Alright, and we're back. Welcome back to Retro Rant. Today we're playing Rayman 2, one of the greatest 3D platformers of all time. And I'm going to try not to, as much as I would like to, I don't want to talk too much about the game because we have some important topics, okay? Today we're going to be talking about human rights as it pertains to immigrant children. And then we'll have a little bit of a talk about the new Space Force as well. And I read a bunch of articles, and it's... the situation is not good. So what's going on right now is, and again, I'm operating from memory, so bear with me. Something along the lines of 2,000 immigrant children are being detained while, you know, while they figure out what to do with them through, you know, deportation efforts. And this is not a new issue, but it is a renewed issue, so it's come up again recently, and the treatment that these children are receiving in these sort of detention facilities is atrocious, and it by my estimation it would be a violation of human rights. I'm just going to speed through this here. That we should not tolerate. That nobody should be tolerating this. Things like physical abuse, mental abuse, illegal drugging. I'm just having a hard time with this, I'm sorry. It's unimaginable treatment of you know, the people who are supposed to be protected most. And as a father, I find it reprehensible. As a human being, I find it reprehensible. As an American, I find it morally repugnant. And we shouldn't tolerate it. So we're getting reports of children being administered psychotropic drugs in order to keep them docile, in order to keep them basically zonked out of their minds, is how I'm seeing it described. You know, by the children's own admission, their own reports, and, you know, through other sources as well. Like, for instance, essentially drugging a child to the point of incapacitation, and then allowing them to video chat with a family member, but they're clearly not. They're like borderline not even conscious at that point, and one of the things I learned is that administering psychotropics to a minor cannot be done without parental consent. But that's exactly what we're missing here, is parental consent. Even parents that we have the contact information for, that we could contact them and ask them, we're not doing that. So yeah, this is atrocious. This is not okay by any stretch of the imagination, alright? The appropriate thing to do at this point in this situation is to put an end to the abuse immediately and punish those responsible, you know, within the extent of the law. And some of these folks that are perpetuating this sort of abuse and this treatment are more or less just being given a pass, or they're being found to be operating within, you know, protocol or whatever the fuck they call it. And that's not okay. You know, even a slap on the wrist at this point is not gonna be okay. And there are those folks who are using the rhetoric of, you know, we're cracking down. There's not going to be any more get out of jail free cards, and we're gonna get the job done and uphold the law. Well, yeah, I mean, you can polish a turd all day long. You can put lipstick on a pig. But you know, it doesn't do any justice to ignore the, you know, the abuses that are occurring in pursuit of that goal. That's not okay. So, is there a way to do it? I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to do it appropriately or correctly. It's a very complex issue. I think separating children from their families is unnecessary and damaging. I think that the physical and mental abuse that they're suffering in these facilities, some of which are known confirmed in the past for committing atrocities. You know, the violations of human rights towards detained immigrants and minors and children. And it's... Sorry, I'm just pissed off. And I think a lot of people are pissed off. And if there were ever a time to draw a line and say, no, this cannot continue, you know, this is not okay, this is unacceptable, and we're not going to stand for it, this should be it. This should be the time. Okay? You know, and then of course the unlawful force of forcing mind-altering chemicals into a developing child's brain. And, you know, who knows what the ramifications of that might be on their intelligence, on their capacities, their mental capacities later in life. You know, we can't, this is something that can't be overlooked or excused. So what do? We take corrective action. Whose responsibility is that? On a moral level, it's everybody's responsibility, but who literally has the authority to enact those things? You know, I'm sorry to say that I don't know. I don't know that information. So yeah, I just don't know. It's a complicated issue. I'm not an expert, as I so frequently remind everyone. You know, I wish I were. I wish I were a better source of information, but I will be posting links to all the articles. I'm going to start doing that. From now on, all the articles, and I'll go back and retroactively add links in the descriptions of previous Retro Rants, so you can read what I read, and sort of form your own conclusions, which I think is important as an educator. I think forming one's own conclusions critically is extremely important. So don't just take my word for anything, or anybody's word for anything. You know, go see what you can find information-wise. And find out for yourself, but I mean, this issue is pretty objectively, you know, I can't imagine a way that anybody could explain this and make it okay, morally or ethically. There's just no way for me to see it that way. You know, 2,000 separate, essentially, human rights violations and abuse cases. You know, that's gotta... Oh, okay, there we go. That's got to mean something. You know, that has to ruffle some people's feathers a little bit. And mine are fucking ruffled, man. You know, it's atrocious. And we should be ashamed of that. I mean, there should be a component of shame, and I think that's part of the issue too, though, is that shame doesn't hold the sway it once did. Okay, there's no way to do that. You know, that it should, maybe. The social power that it once did. Embarrassment has kind of fallen by the wayside. And there, you know, people have found ways of explaining away what should cause shame and embarrassment. Which is unfortunate, extremely unfortunate, I think. I think that's a moral failing of society currently. So yeah, so what else? Alright, so we have this clusterfuck going on. You know, so the other big issue, though, is, and I think, and unfortunately, some of this discussion over Space Force, you know, the new, the suggested new branch of the military, sixth branch of the military, is unfortunately taking a little bit of the importance and spotlight away from this human rights violation. And one thing I'm going to add to that in a minute is the U.S. has not only opted out of the Paris Climate Accord and a couple of other things, but we've also given up our participation in the sort of United Nations-driven human rights pact. I forget what it's called. I'm sorry. You know, I can't remember off the top of my head. It's in the articles. I'll post a link to that one, too. of, you know, us deciding to pull out of that thing. And I'll bring that up again later. So for now, let's talk about the distraction. Let's talk about the elephant in the room that is detracting from a very real and serious issue that needs to be taken a little bit more seriously than it is currently being taken. And that's Space Force. Space Force, right? And a lot of people are getting really weird about that. It makes them feel weird. And I can understand that reaction to an extent. But having done a little bit of research into that matter, the proposal isn't as drastic, I don't think, as people are making it seem. Which makes it an unfortunate candidate to detract from other more serious issues like these immigrant children and the way that that's being handled. So let's... oh god, twice in a row. So let's dive into that, okay? What was the system in place before? Have people attempted to militarize space before? Yes. This is not new. It's just, again, renewed. So this isn't a brand new issue, it's a renewed issue. Something that has been talked about before. But SpaceX, or not SpaceX, excuse me, misspoke. Space Force, like Air Force, right? Space Force. The Russians attempted something like this in the past during the Cold War, as did the United States. China also, I believe, has either talked about this or done or tried to do something like this. So now we're talking about making a military branch specifically for orbit, right? Low orbit or whatever, space. And some of it, I think, some of the assertions I've seen about this are that, you know, that the idea is not to put soldiers and weapons into space necessarily, but it's more like an effort to have either defense systems or not, maybe not even that, maybe just information collecting, sort of, you know, satellite-driven stuff. And again, I'm not fully aware of the extent. You know, I may be speaking a little bit out of ignorance, as I do, you know, necessarily have to sometimes, because I'm not an expert. But it's not the first time this has happened. That doesn't necessarily mean it's okay or that it's a good idea. There are certainly lots of opponents to the Space Force idea or suggestion. But even then, you know, okay, so how did the system work before? It was covered by the Air Force. It was just a portion of the Air Force, is my understanding of how it has typically been handled. So what this would in effect do is make it no longer the purview of the Air Force specifically, but make it its own branch, okay? Make it its own military branch. And I don't know enough. I don't think there's enough information out yet. I don't think anybody knows enough of the intentions of this program to accurately gauge whether or not it's a good idea. I think it's just too early to tell. So I'm gonna withhold judgment on that one for now. But I will say again that I think it's unfortunate. It seems to detract some of the attention from an issue that is extremely serious, this violation of human rights. So back to the United States' withdrawal. Where is the music? I don't hear any music. The United States' withdrawal from our human rights, I don't know, World Committee, if you want to call it that. I guess we could call it that. Oh, here. Okay, I see. And what message does that send? What does that mean? You know, how does that reflect on us as a country or as a society that we're willing to do that around the same time as human rights violations are occurring in the country? Those two, that's a bad combination. And a lot of people have also commented on, you know, President Trump's willingness to be friendly towards dictators and be hostile towards our traditional allies. And I don't have a whole lot of, you know, I'm not entirely sure what to say about that. So I won't say anything really, but it is an observation some people have made. And so it's just kind of, it's just a bad mixture. You know, it's almost a perfect storm of negativity and bad news centered around human rights, which is something that I think the United States is supposed to be championing. Not that we have a great track record of human rights, but better than some, I guess, would be the consolation there. Oh, jeez. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. So what do you do about that? You know? I think renewing our commitment for human rights would be a good first step. Maybe rejoining the human rights organization that we've recently backed off from would be an important thing to do. Oh. Jeez. Oh no. Okay, it doesn't outright kill you though. So yeah, those would be important first steps. Immediately ceasing and finding a better solution, because there must be one, to the immigrant child issue. Would be really important to act on quickly and quit minimizing it and brushing it to the wayside and trying to explain it away. Space Force, we'll see. I don't know. It might be okay. It might be a terrible idea. It might be, who knows? I think it's hard to tell, but keep an eye on that one. I guess in your spare time. And yeah, I mean, human rights have got to remain important. They just have to. You know, you can't ever, you're never going to get me to agree that oh, it's okay because, oh, it's okay because, you know. Oh, and the reason why, from what I read, the reason why we have backed out of the Human Rights Organization, reportedly, was because the powers that be were getting tired of that organization criticizing Israel and the United States for human rights violations. And again, I won't pretend to be an expert. You know, I am aware that the United States has not been the exemplar that we would hope for human rights, which is unfortunate. But yeah, this is an issue that can't be ignored. I think I'm kind of stuck here anyway. So anyway, Rayman 2 is a great game. I'll probably play it again at some point. It's my favorite 3D platformer, right up there with Mario 64 and Psychonauts and Banjo-Kazooie and all of those. Maybe even better in some regards than some of those. So yeah, that's it. I just had to get that out quickly. I do have a couple more topics, a couple more retro rants on the way. And again, they'll be a little bit out of order. This one had to come out first. It's too important. There's no two ways about it. I don't know. I'm furious. I'm disappointed. I'm embarrassed. So yeah, let's free our friend real quick, since that's the theme of the day. You know, getting people the human rights freedoms that they deserve, if I can. Oh geez, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Hang on. Hoof it, Rayman. You got this. And boop. Let's throw it. No. Okay. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong here. Okay, still stuck. Never mind. Episode over. Peace. Next time we're playing Doom 3, talking about game design. Time after that, we're playing Doom 64 and talking about Doomsday and global warming and stuff. So that'll be fun. Stick around. Stay tuned. I got more music coming out and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's really been a lot of fun to be back. And to talk about some of these. Well, I don't know. I can't get this one right. All right, peace out, guys. That's it for this one. Just something to think about. And I, you know, if I can spread the awareness a little bit and lend a voice of calm reason to something that's this unreasonable, then I'll try to do that. Anyway, peace. Better topics next time. Bye. Oh, okay. There we go. I figured it out. Peace. Bye.